Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. Our dedication to living life joyfully allows us to confront the reality of unmitigated deception and political denial of the harm caused by nuclear and chemical contamination. We demand an end to corporate control of science and suppression of facts for political and financial gain. We are not assets on a balance sheet. We must honestly work together to remediate damage to benefit our planet and humanity. Remember, happiness is resistance, and love is greater than fear. Join the Age of Fission radio show on Spreaker.com. Search for Lonnie Clark for all our podcasted shows. Podcasts are also on YouTube at nutzforart, NUTZFORART. Thank you for being part of the solution. Good evening. This is Lonnie Clark, your host with the Age of Fission radio show. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to have with us Miss Diane Turco, who is the director of the Cape Downwinders. She lives in Cape Cod out in Massachusetts. And thank you, Diane, for joining us. I'm really grateful for you to share your story with us here.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be on your show. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Look, why don't you give us a little bit of background? We're on the West Coast here, and very few people know about the activism that you've been doing for over 30 years, but you've been instrumental in closing down the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant, correct?
Well, Cape Downwinders has been an organization since the 1980s. We had a different name back then, but there's been a lot of folks here working to get the Pilgrim Nuclear Reactor shut down for decades. It finally was closed on May 31st of this year. But now we're working on the serious problems of the nuclear waste dump that is now Plymouth, Massachusetts.
What do you mean the serious waste? You mean the waste that's sitting there from the nuclear power facility?
Yes. There's over 3,500 spent fuel assemblies on site. They're located in 17 dry casks that we question and also in a degrading spent fuel pool.
Wow.
So that's very serious because the Union of Concerned Scientists with their Princeton peers completed a study that showed if there was a spent fuel pool fire at the Pilgrim reactor pool, it would contaminate from Manhattan to Nova Scotia.
What's their plan with all this waste?
Right now, they're planning to put it into dry casks, and they're Holtec dry casts. So we're questioning that. And now Holtec has just received the license for Pilgrim, and that's another big concern of ours.
That's kind of odd. Now, for our listeners, the Holtec casts, which is why they're questionable, the United States is the only country that puts our waste in these casks, and they are 5/8 inch thick. So you can't inspect them once they go into the container that seals around them.
Right. And we can all agree that decommissioning and storing of the waste needs to be done safely and responsibly. We can all agree on that, but that's not happening here. We're also concerned, too, is that the security around Pilgrim is pretty poor.
Yeah, well, the security around every single nuclear facility is pretty poor, if you ask me.
Right. I've gone on the site past the no trespassing signs where you can eyeball the dry casks.
You have it yourself? You've just gone past it with nobody stopping you?
With reporters. I've been on with multiple reporters, and we're there for 30 minutes, and no one comes out to tell us to leave.
Well, Diane, let me ask you this, because my take on these interviews is really different than a lot of people, because my thing is I am dumbfounded at the lack of security and just the lackadaisical attitude that our government continues to have. It's not like this is brand new. This has just been standard procedure. I mean, like you said, it's taken them over 30 years to close this power plant, but how many cows? I mean, what scientific mind would think that it's okay to keep 3,500 spent fuel rods at one location with that type of danger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's just the history of the whole nuclear power industry.
I mean,
when it was developed, they didn't know what they were going to do with the waste. In fact, I have David Lilienthal was the first chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, and in his journals he wrote back in like 1972 that they didn't know what they were going to do with the waste, and they still don't know what to do with it. It's right now at all the reactor sites around the country. And so we're really concerned about that. And with Holtec taking over Pilgrim, that's another concern. But our biggest issue was that our Attorney General, Maura Healey, she is fabulous. Well, she filed contentions related to radiological, environmental, and financial concerns with Holtec taking the license, and submitted that to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission back in February. And just recently, the license was transferred without a hearing on those contentions. So that's just, a failure of our government in our democratic state here to address serious concerns that are even being pushed by our Attorney General.
Well, could you explain what that means, like that they took over the license and that there wasn't a hearing? What is the procedure that we're supposed to have, and why couldn't what's the controversy over Holtec taking over this site?
Well, one of them is financial. There's a $1.1 billion decommissioning trust fund that goes along with the sale. So Holtec now owns that decommissioning trust fund. And let me step back, because the decommissioning trust fund was paid by ratepayers. That's our money. It didn't come out of the operating budget. It was meant to safely decommission Pilgrim when it closed. And so now Holtec, even their own numbers don't add up. And that there will probably be a shortfall. And if there's a shortfall, as an LLC, they can file bankruptcy and just be gone. So our Attorney General has questioned that.
So
they also should be doing? Yeah.
That means that they could drain that entire $1 billion trust fund and then say, "Oh, we haven't finished the job," and then declare bankruptcy. And then what happens?
Then we're stuck with the bill. The taxpayers will end up paying for it.
So then the state has to continue to fund it, or the federal government continues to fund it.
Well, when you look at what's happening now is Entergy, the previous owner, had to pay for emergency planning and radiological monitoring, and now that it's shut down, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has given exemptions for emergency planning. Now it's to the fence. It used to be 10 miles out at least. And also, too, is that they don't have to continue monitoring. Now the state is going to have to pick up that bill,
Wow. So could you, again, I want to slow this bit back down for my listeners here on the West Coast and in the middle of the country. Where exactly is the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Facility, so people could be reminded of where it's at?
All right, Pilgrim is in America's hometown, Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Wow.
It's about 35 miles south as the crow flies from Boston. Not very far.
Wow.
Cape Cod sits in a peninsula just south of Plymouth.
What would they do if they had a major catastrophe there? You couldn't possibly evacuate that area.
No, and in fact, that was one of our major messages when Pilgrim was operating, and even now with the waste there is no escape from the Cape. The state plan for emergency response for us was they would be closing the bridge so that our traffic would not interfere with people evacuating from the Plymouth area, and that we would be relocated later after contamination. So everybody on Cape Cod has free potassium iodide pills to protect our thyroids from an accident at Pilgrim, because we weren't going anywhere, and the government knew that. And Entergy paid for these pills. So can you imagine, what other corporation or business provides medication for the public in order to operate?
Right.
And that's what was happening here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And for the government to say that that's okay, the risk of death is okay to run as if the energy to bring 10% or 15% of energy is worth the lives of any single. It's incomprehensible to me.
Right.
So that's kind of my question to you is, you've been involved with this for 30 years. I'm kind of a newbie in this deal. I've been doing it 5 years, and I'm fit to be tied over the fact that we just get continued lip service out of our elected officials. Like they literally know me on this issue now because I've called them up so many times. But they smile in my face, say, yes, we're behind you. Oregon actually passed a law that says we don't have nuclear power in this state. And yet all of my representatives signed a letter to endorse the new scale power facilities.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
So what do you think it is? What's the political drive to make this appealing? I guess what is it that do they really believe it's not going to harm anybody?
Money. Follow the money. Follow the money.
Is it only money?
We have been pushing for legislation here in Massachusetts when Pilgrim was operating to expand the emergency planning zone to include Cape Cod, and every year it failed. Well, you know what? The Entergy lobbyist was one of the highest paid lobbyists in the state. Why does it keep failing? It just seems common sense that you would want to have emergency planning to protect the public.
What did your elected officials say when you asked them that?
Well, they say they tried. It's a vote. We need more pressure.
Who was the ones who voted against it, though?
They just voted against a budget amendment, so that
because it's the money. Because they don't want to spend the money on the emergency.
Well, it would have been assessed to the utility. That's what we were asking for, it to be assessed to Entergy. Entergy paid for, although what happens is Entergy pays money into the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and then they even had more money than they needed. So when they said the bridges would be open, NEMA did to us, and said we weren't telling the truth about the bridges closing until we got the maps and the plans, and then they had to not say that anymore. It's just I just think it's all about the money. We wonder about that too. They also talk about preemption, that the federal government, the laws say that the states cannot address public safety. Only the Nuclear Regulatory Commission can, and that's a law. But we'll say, change the law then. If it's not working for the people, and it's not protecting the people, and if the NRC is not doing their mandate, which is to protect the people and the environment, then the law needs to be changed. We've asked for that too, but that didn't happen.
Diane, do you think this is one of the things? Do you think that this waste is in any way important to the nuclear arms race?
Oh, absolutely. Without nuclear power, there would be no nuclear weapons.
Why?
President Trump there was a draft memo from the DOE last year where the government actually said we need nuclear power to keep our military modern.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah.
And Trump has endorsed it. He signed an executive order that said the United States government will fund the nuclear industry. Mm-hmm. That's when I really started thinking about this. Like, there is no way, because it doesn't really provide a large amount of energy considering all 90% of our Department of Energy budget goes to nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Right.
Right. I mean, and the resistance and the constant lies and the buttering up of the employees, because basically what they're doing is coercing the employees to keep their trap shut by giving them big fat paychecks.
They do, nuclear workers do get paid very well.
Very well. I mean, double at least what you could make anywhere else. I mean,
right.
So,
but one of our concerns too is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is not really enforcing their own regulations. At Pilgrim, Entergy was given an order to put a plan together to, quote, reduce willful misconduct at their reactors because workers were falsifying records. They found falsified records at Pilgrim too. But
that's called firing people. Can't you just fire people?
Right.
Do these people not get fired?
And no civil fines. They just get a slap on the wrist. So that's another thing that Cape Downwinders is pulling together is that we, I think it was 1974, the Atomic Energy Commission was Atomic Energy Commission was abolished, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission
But
came on
isn't
board.
that almost why they were abolished? Is because they were like licking the boots. That's a Congress kind of spanked them, and so then they reorganized. So this is basically what happens is they get bought out, and then Congress realizes this is too corrupt. So then they make the lobbyists start all over again. Like it's like why can't we just like outlaw lobbying? How about that idea?
Right. Well, what we're saying, what we'd like is that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission now be abolished in a new agency that is intergovernmental with state and local input. And not just at the federal level, but that people in their own towns and in their own states can have some power about safety. Right now, that's the preemption is the law.
That's actually a good idea. What's that called? What are you calling that?
I don't know. Well, we're just abolish the NRC is the first step. But we're putting that together now. So that's hard because, enough
that's
with the NRC.
That's the downside to that. I mean, I think all of this actually is the push towards the vision for 2020. You've read Carl Grossman's book, Weapons in Space, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so, this is why we have the Space Force coming out this year, actually. Donald Trump didn't invent the Space Force.
No.
But they brought out a blithering idiot to introduce it.
Right, but no, that's been in the works for many years.
A long time. Many years. I think it was 82, 72 or something like that. This document was written a long time ago, several decades, and this is the fruition of their idea. And I think that as much as we think we're going to close down these, it's kind of like, okay, they're telling you can close the facilities now, but guess what? We're going to let the people who actually we know mishandle the nuclear waste deal with the decommissioning. What do you think they're going to do with the decommissioning? Do you know what I mean? We know.
Right, exactly.
Holtec's own brochures say that the tanks that we put our waste into actually leak after 20 years. And once they start leaking, their own documents say once they start leaking, you can't move them. Right. So
we asked at Pilgrim. So we go to we have a nuclear advisory, Citizens Nuclear Advisory Committee in Massachusetts. So we go to the meetings, and Holtec's there. And, there's one of the Holtec reps saying that they have an impeccable safety record. And we're like, well, what's going on at San Onofre?
Did you say that to them? Did you ask them that on the record?
Yes, I did.
What did they say?
They said nothing. They just stared at me.
Really?
But also, too, is they have the caps there, and we said, okay, so what is your plan if there's a leak or a crack in a canister? And Entergy said, well, we're going to put a larger concrete pack over it, like a Russian doll kind of thing. And we said, so do you have any of those on site since you already have 17 canisters on the pad? No. And the second question was, has the Nuclear Regulatory Commission approved that process? No. So this is all of this waste is it needs to be safe and responsible. It's neither. And that's when we as the public need to have some really strong input on this.
Don't you think that this is a crime against humanity?
Absolutely. And that's why we keep doing what we're doing. Absolutely.
What kind of input can the community? We have, we're not a gigantic show, but we have a small following. What kind of few hundred or 1,000 people that are listening to us? What can we do to impact this? Because that is stunning that they have. Actually, that is probably par for the course at every single nuclear facility, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But what can we do?
Well, we go to these nuclear decommissioning citizens advisory panel meetings where there are state officials, representatives from like the emergency planning, from the Department of Health, There are local legislators. There are and elected officials and citizens. And it's once a month, and we go and present these issues to them. They have been excellent outside of the Entergy, the Entergy people on the board. But they are really on it now, and I think that's why our Attorney General was so strong in her appeal for the petition to intervene on the license transfer. So our state's very involved right now.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That
so
helps a lot.
Yes. So, and we're trying to coordinate too with the other groups that are dealing with Holtec, like out in California and New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Michigan. So, yeah, because you know what? We asked them how many. They came in and said, Holtec, we are a leader in this decommissioned level. And I said, well, how many reactors have you decommissioned? You know what the answer was? 0.
Wow.
Yeah.
They've never decommissioned. Why did they want this project? The money, the $1 billion trust fund.
Yeah. Yep. So they just got an exemption from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to be able to use the decommissioning trust fund for spent fuel management. That was never part of the plan. But the NRC gave them an exemption. And what they do is they'll use that money, and it's $1.2 million for every cask they fill. And then they're buying their own casks. Which
1.2. Wait a minute. So the trust fund provides $1.2 million for insurance? Is that what you just said?
No. The decommissioning trust fund was never meant to be used for spent fuel management. That should be coming out of their operating budget. But since there is no money to be made on profit, they're making their money from the decommissioning trust fund. So the NRC gave them an exemption to be able to use that money to transfer the waste into dry casks. Plus, they're buying their own dry casks. Their whole
they're going to put all that waste in all these leaking half-inch thick canisters that you still can't inspect. They're going to use the same type where you can't look at what the containers look like.
Right.
This is so irresponsible. That is unbelievable, Diane. Really?
Well, let me finish this story, because beyond that is because the Department of Energy does not take the waste, Holtec will be able to sue the Department of Energy, and they will be reimbursed for that money. But will they put it back into the decommissioning trust fund? No, they were given the license transfer amendment without any conditions, so they're going to pocket that money. How criminal is that?
Why were they given an exemption?
Because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is owned by the industry.
That's the simple answer. That's the simple answer. It's owned by the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. I'm sorry for the noise in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, but the gardener decided to go in the backyard and it's buzzing away. So, wow, what a trip this is. I can't believe that we actually have to live through this. You know what's going to be bad is our grandchildren aren't going to be able to live through it.
No, I mean, we're really leaving a horrible legacy.
The people that are making these decisions are making gross. See, it's kind of like the same theory for me, Diane, about Trump putting Rick Perry in the Department of Energy because he specifically wanted to dismantle it. And the decision he made to move 100 million gallons of highly radioactive waste and treat it as if it's low-level waste, in my view, is a crime against humanity. Because they will be transporting that waste practically unfettered, practically, not very well protected, and unsecure on the highways. Like it's insecure completely. I think it's World War III. I think it's an assault on America. I think we're watching Pinochet I call Trader Trump, Pinochet 2.0 from day one, and I think this is them on Balco. I think it's part of the program.
Wow.
This is
Well, I don't think the waste is ever going to go anywhere.
no.
If they don't have any place to put it, Yucca Mountain is not a location.
Well,
The science
what
says
they
it
need
needed
to
to be a
do,
dry.
I think, is put some money into the science and learn how to unfission it. Like, if they need to figure out how to, like, reverse the process. Spend billions on that. I think that's where the billion, and stop making it. Boom.
Right.
Like,
Stop
put it
making
in.
it.
Stop making it right now. Every nuclear facility shuts down until we get this pesky little problem managed. Because even if it's not that harmful, quote unquote, buying their lies, okay, and it takes long term to affect us, if we keep building it exponentially because of the nature of the beast, of how exponentially the nuclear issue grows, it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 2 times 2 equals 4 times 16 times 32 times boom, 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 exponentially. We can't keep adding it.
Right.
It's not.
They've got to stop.
It's not like we're making a lot of extra pairs of socks or something.
Right.
I'm dumbfounded. This is a thing that I have found when I have only really gone to one meeting with government officials about nuclear. Well, I went to two. I went to two where one was where they gave a presentation, and the second was a presentation with comments. Well, that was the one last year. I went on my birthday on October 16th. I went to the one where Oregon held a hearing with Department of Oregon Energy, Department of Ecology from Washington, and the Department of Energy on, at that time, reclassifying the 66,000 gallons of nuclear waste at Hanford. That's part of this program that they just did. And the room was packed. People could not believe they were talking about it. And all the Department of Energy people, like, it was just such lip service. It was... Yes. I mean, they were people looking at you going, yes, yes, shaking your hand, and yes, I'm very concerned, and that's very interesting. And you could see in the back of their face, like, they knew they were going to stab you in the back no matter what you said to them, how sweet you are to them, how much they like you. They're willing to kill their own kids. These are true psychopaths. Like, they know the harm they're doing. This is, Right. This is not a joke. Those people that reclassified that waste, her name is Ann White. I found out her name. I dug up some research on that whole project. Do you know? Yeah. Do you know that they contributed one of the sites, the one site in Texas contributed $1.3 million to Rick Perry's governorship campaign 10 years ago?
No. Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Yep. So... this is a little bit of the payback, isn't it?
Right.
It's, yeah.
So
I have that. I did a show on that, and I have all the links. Like, I just looked at all the links. It's all right there. It's all. This is the interesting thing, where just like the NRC, Diane, it's in public. They don't care. Like, go look. Like,
no, they don't care.
Like Donna Gilmore, she's the one who found out this, from SanOnofreeSafety.org. She's the one who found out about the CAS. She just read. She just read their technical blah 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 that none of us could stomach to read or understand, exactly. or probably comprehend. It's because she has that analytical mind, and she was kind of trained on how to read systems, so she understands all that stuff.
Right. She's done some awesome work. Absolutely.
I mean, she's the one who discovered it. Like, how many people have been involved in this, and not very many people picked up on that. And, it's the truth. Right. Thank God it's just in time, because most of our casts are 15, 16 years old. How old are the casts at Pilgrim?
They're only 5 years old.
How old?
They just started filling them when the spent fuel pool was so stuffed they could not put any more waste into it unless they removed some. And that's the only reason they put the waste in casks to start. So I think they filled like 4 up so they could do refueling. But then they found out that the pool was degrading.
Oh my! Because they had overstuffed it.
Because well, it was designed to hold 880 assemblies, and then it was holding over 2,800.
What?
And yes, it's
3 times.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And
yes.
did anybody go to jail, or did anybody lose their job over that?
What happened is when it's a Mark I boiling water reactor, like the reactor at Fukushima. So when they got to 800, the Boston Edison applied for an exemption to allow more fuel in the pool, and the NRC granted it. And then they found out that the Boraflex panels were degrading, and so they started putting the fuel into different patterns in the pool, but they found out it was still degrading.
This is This
but,
is so
right.
incomprehensible. You know, I'm kind of shocked at this because I'm new to the activism world of even caring about nuclear stuff. I 100% believe that the NRC was making these people do this correctly.
Oh, no.
I'll bet you if we looked into what's up at Columbia Generating Station, we'd find exactly the same thing. How do you find out how many you put? I mean, how do you find that out? What's in there? Where do you look?
You could ask. You can ask the NRC.
Okay.
How many? You can ask the.
Do you think it's
whoever
posted
owns
on their
that
website?
reactor.
It's probably listed on their website, or is that something you actually have to ask?
You could see it on the website. I don't know. You can check it. It's public information.
Okay, so I am going to look because it's on the website. So I'm going to be looking for. And how do you know how much each one is supposed to hold?
Well, we know that the General Electric Mark I boiling water reactors were supposed to hold it was designed for 880 assemblies in the pool. So you probably could find out from whatever the
total
type
number
of,
and then divide that. Yeah. Go look and see what it is. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, and I think that I don't mean to sound kind of slow about this, but the reason I ask this is I want most of my audience is probably like me, like they don't know nobody knows how to find this stuff out and where do you start from it, but it's really important because I'll bet you 2 to 1 at we're working really hard. It's identical to the one, it's exactly like the one in Fukushima, same one as yours, I think.
Okay, you have a Mark I, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, we're working to close it down. Louisa Hamachek and I started this show called The Last Nuke. It's a half-hour show, and what we talk about is the risk of what is being presented to the Northwest by continuing to have this nuclear power plant open right on the Columbia River. It's insane what they did to the Columbia Gorge. They had 8 plutonium processing plants there during World War II. Can you imagine? Now, and they're wondering why we don't have salmon. They turned it into the plutonium Pacific. That's why.
Oh, wow. It's such a beautiful area.
God, it's so beautiful.
Such a beautiful. Yeah, yeah. And it's like Cape Cod, too. Pilgrim is right on Cape Cod Bay. Right on Cape Cod Bay. It's leaking tritium into Cape Cod Bay.
I know. Same thing with Indian Point. Indian Point is,
right.
I read a report, Indian Point is leaking 66,000% above the limited amount. Has been nonstop for 4 years in Indian Point. Every day, 66,000%. I mean, it is kind of shocking how irresponsible the NRC has been.
Right.
I mean,
right. And how is your state responding to all of this? Well, we had. I
think the state talks out of both sides of its mouth. If you want me to say that, because the people of the state voted to shut down nuclear in this. They made it illegal to have nuclear power plants in this state. But we have military facilities that have nuclear. We have an open uranium pit in a forest that's just sitting there, and the state just puts salt around it every 10 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's if it's overseen by the federal government and the NRC, everything they touch is done with intentional negligence. It's malicious.
Yeah.
I mean, I find them to be intentionally, that you have to be a psychopath almost to work at the NRC. I mean, Jasko got booted out because he was a humane human being. He was like, wait a minute, we need to shut this stuff down. And then went, wait a minute, you're not supposed to care about the human beings. This is about science and moving forward in the Space Force. And, you know, their idea, see, their thing is to promote nuclear power. It is to promote nuclear power. And, you know, and they had two missions, and they picked that you can't do both. You can't protect human health and promote nuclear power.
Yeah. Exactly.
So they picked, and it's not us, folks.
No, it isn't.
Not yet, so, anyways. You know, not yet, because it will be. You know why? Because so many people's children are going to be sick in the future.
Right.
I mean, we're only at the beginning. We're only, think about this, Diane. What number power plant is Pilgrim in the country to shut down?
I'm not sure, but I think there's like 98 or 97 still operating.
Mm-hmm. Out of how many?
I'm not sure the total amount.
110 or something was the max, wasn't it?
Because Oyster Creek just shut down, and Holtec bought Oyster Creek. They bought Pilgrim, and they're trying to buy.
Holtec bought Oyster Creek?
To decommission. Now, here again is a corporation that's never decommissioned, and they're a house of cards, and, you know, their parent company, SNC Lavalin, is a Canadian company, and they are so corrupt that they were debarred from the World Bank for corruption and bribery charges. And they've been found guilty of bribery charges, I think, at TVA. I don't have it in front of me, but no.
How much did they contribute to the Rick Perry or Donald Trump's campaign?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
I think that
just Google Holtec.
Yeah, that'll be easy.
I'll look. Trove of,
Because you know what, that's how I when I heard this thing about Rick Perry doing this uranium thing and the two people that it was a no bid contract and he just gave it to them. I'm like, really? Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? And it was really easy to find out.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's so unbelievable. And so, what are you guys doing? What's your action that you're taking out there, the Cape Downwinders?
Well, you know, we've been supporting our Attorney General, and we wrote a letter to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Deb Katz and I, Deb Katz is the Executive Director of the Citizens Awareness Network in Western Mass. We wrote a letter to the NRC asking them, now doesn't this make sense? Please suspend the license transfer until the contentions as submitted by our Attorney General are heard and resolved. And we got a letter back saying, well, we already transferred the license. So we said, okay, now we have almost 100 endorsers of our second letter going to the NRC from across the country. We have somebody from Washington State, organizations, Sierra Club, Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, okay? Mm-hmm. And they are all endorsing this letter calling for suspension of the license transfer until the contentions are heard. Let's see if this puts a little pressure on them.
Well, let's see if they'll even respond.
Well, they responded to our first letter within a few days and said that they were going to be impartial because of the contentions. It's like, okay, you're impartial, so you let the license transfer go through. Mm-hmm. That's not impartiality. Mm-hmm. That's nonsense.
Oh, so they can say, well, we were just being efficient. We just didn't hold it up. We just got it done right away. Let's get it done.
Well, that's what Holtec wanted. Entergy wanted to get out of town.
Wow. And
leave Holtec, and now Holtec's the owner. And they have Holtec Pilgrim, Holtec Decommissioning, and there's 3 LLCs connected with this. So, it's a house of cards.
Well, yeah. You know why they separated into 3? To dig deep into that $1 billion fund.
Right. One of them owns the fund. The other is going to do the work. So
what does Senator Markey say about this? Have you guys talked to his office?
Well, he said that the NRC has abdicated its responsibility. He said that many times over the years. Okay, and we know that. We know that. What we need is something to happen. Okay? So we're hoping this, something, they've got to do something else. And that's why we say, let's change the laws here so that the state and local governments have input into the decisions that are affecting all of our lives. It's criminal, like you said, it's criminal negligence for them to not, that we can't have say in the health and safety of our own communities. Outrageous.
Well, what's really outrageous is they give us lip service, and then they make these decisions that are antithetical to life.
Right. Not only lip service, they lie. This is what I'll tell you a quick story. What happened at Pilgrim a couple of years ago? There was a huge blizzard, and the governor was on saying, no traffic, stay home, roads are closed. So I thought, well, if there was an emergency at Pilgrim, which they had problems with the switch yards, and it was always scramming during storms, they wouldn't be able to evacuate the area. So I contacted the NRC and said, why aren't you closing Pilgrim if an emergency evacuation cannot take place because of the blizzard and the no travel ban? And they said, we talked to the local emergency directors, and they said they could evacuate their areas. So I called the local emergency directors, and they never said that. So we filed a petition for that with the NRC, and they just wrote it off. Not a big deal. I even had an email from the NRC staff person who said that they had asked the emergency directors, and they said they could evacuate. A blatant lie.
And the NRC says, oh, okay, and takes that down, so you can just lie to their faces, and they just go, okay, no problem.
You know what? They're getting the industry and the NRC are getting away with murder.
Literally.
And there's no accountability. Exactly. And there's no accountability.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know that I've had some arguments on Twitter. I end up blocking people because, like, these people are like, oh, you believe these lies that nuclear harms people and it's causing harm. I said, you know why we don't have the test? Because nobody tested around 3 Mile Island.
Mm-hmm.
That's the facts.
The monitors were turned off. But here in Massachusetts, Dr. Richard Clapp completed a peer-reviewed study in the early 90s and found that the closer you lived or worked to Pilgrim, the incidence of leukemia was 400%. Increased 400%. 4 times, yep. And it was a peer-reviewed study. He thought, there have been studies around the world.
This is the thing. There is proof to it. It's not like, okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Right.
It's just like everything else. It's like the whole tech canisters being too thin.
Mm-hmm.
We know what they. But the question is, why do we have an ineffective government? Why do we have why are our elected, if we do not live in a fascist state controlled by the military for the benefit of corporations, why in fact a man like Senator Markey, who is really, I think, one of the best we have in the Congress, why is he ineffective? Why can't we just shut this thing down? Why are we having our hands tied? If this
Senator Markey has done. He's done a lot of great things, but he never called such Pilgrim to be shut down.
Right. I've never heard him talk about it.
He has a. Go ahead.
Well, I just wondered that. Have you guys ever asked him why?
Yes. Well, we asked him. We asked him to amend the Atomic Energy Act to give the power back to the states as.
Yeah.
Amend the act. They've done that before, and he said no because it would never pass. But you still have to do it. You have to start somewhere.
Sounds like Nancy Pelosi. We can't impeach because they won't do it. You have to do things on ethics.
It's not partisan. Right.
You have to do it knowing that if you believe that it's the correct thing, then your power of ethics will triumph. It may look bleak, but you at least have to make the effort.
Right.
So this is the question. Right. Why don't they? Because they don't want to be ostracized. See, this is the thing. What they're saying in that is they don't want to be targeted. They don't want to be primaried by the Democratic Party who promotes nuclear industry. For real.
Well, We heard Representative Kennedy's running against Markey, or may run against him. I don't think he's announced it quite yet, but that's what the news is around here. But Senator Markey has a huge background in nuclear. He knows the issues. So, but he never would call for shutting down Pilgrim, even when it was the worst of the worst. You know.
What was his reasoning for not doing that?
He didn't ever really give us a reason. He just wouldn't do it.
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, my senators won't say they want to close the Columbia generating station. It's almost like it's taboo. I call it nuclear numbing. Right.
And a lot of times the politicians will say, well, even if we call for it to be shut down, that's not going to shut it down. And we said, you have a moral obligation. The Massachusetts Constitution identifies our right to safety. And we want that to be upheld. We've said that many times, and it didn't happen. Even our Representative Keating wouldn't call for the shutdown of Pilgrim. Oh, jobs. That's what they say, the jobs. It just came back. The jobs.
It's always the jobs, isn't it? It's the jobs.
Yeah.
What they're really talking about.
Say, well, you know what? If there was an accident at Pilgrim and Cape Cod got covered with radiation, radioactive nuclides, then we would lose all of this, all the tourism, it would be billions and billions of dollars for 600 jobs.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not really just the jobs. It's the billions of dollars it brings into the state for the federal trust fund. They get a lot of money for these nuclear power facilities to run there. So that's the other part of it that I found out. The whole thing, it was a very insidious way they've built this up, because not only that, they're very difficult, as you guys are finding out, just to shut down. I mean, you celebrated, yay, we closed it down, and now you're realizing, you're going to do what with the spent fuel? That's another 30-year
Right. We knew that was all in the background because, when they originally started talking about decommissioning, I think it was 2 years ago, Entergy was going to go on the Safe Store, which is a weird acronym, Safe Store. But the NRC allows utility owners to mothball their reactor and the spent fuel pool to up to 60 years before they do anything. That's one of the options for decommissioning.
So what does that, wait a minute, what does that mean? They allow them to mothball them?
They don't have to decommission for 60 years. So they could leave the waste in the pool.
Wait a minute. We're giving them access to billions of dollars and they can just leave it there for 60 years?
Yeah. And then that's what they said is $1 billion, because it's all on Wall Street, would grow exponentially so that they would be able to afford the complete decommissioning in 60 years.
So are you saying they cannot take that $60 billion and use it anywhere else?
Well, now they can. Now that
Exactly. So wait a minute. Let's just get this full picture here then, Diane.
Okay.
We gave them access to $1 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to decommission, but they can legally just leave it there for 60 years and do nothing with it on decommissioning. And then they can use the $1 billion to do what their real business is, which is the managing these containers and casks. So we're paying them to make their products. Is that right?
What Holtec is saying is they're going to come in here and they're going to move all the fuel out. Actually, they just put in for a license, an amendment to their certificate of compliance, I think it's called. And they want to be able to put hot fuel in after a year it's been cooling in the pool. When it used to be, it had to cool for 5 years before it could go into a canister. Now they want it to be 1 year to move everything up quick. It just doesn't sound very safe.
Okay, so they move it out quick, but what's their plan if it doesn't work on the first? What's their plan for emergency in case it goes terribly wrong? What's their plan for that? Have they planned for that?
You mean if a cast drops or something?
Oh, well, I mean, like, let's say they put it in this canister safely that says it's going to cool down. They put it in there, it's cooled down a year, but it's really supposed to have been cooled down for 5. Once it's in there,
Right.
something catastrophic, if it needed a longer cooling period of time, is going to happen once they've sealed it up. So let's say something catastrophic happens, it goes kablooey.
Right.
What's their plan?
Well, they're saying that's not going to happen, number one.
Okay.
And they're saying that if anything happens, that there's a minimum risk of off-site radiological damage.
Minimal
and that's why
risk.
that's why the NRC has given them an exemption for emergency planning, that they only need to plan to the fence, which means they don't even have to coordinate with the Plymouth police or fire. They're going to just assume that they're going to help if there's a problem.
To the fence.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it a chain link fence?
It is a chain link fence, believe it or not, and you can see the dry cast. They're actually moving them, and they'll be right next to the road.
Have you seen that documentary called The Safe Side of the Fence about St. Louis?
No.
Oh, this is how these people, it kind of dawned on them. It's about how the people from, I think, Bridgeton figured out that there's radioactive waste in there. This is why they were all sick, because they were having a picnic with their kids one day next to this old facility. It wasn't even an active facility, and all of a sudden on the other side of the chain link fence they saw people coming out with radiological protective gear. And they're like, with breathing masks and everything sitting there, and these people are having a picnic, and they called the state, and the state said, oh, well, you guys are on the safe side of the fence.
Oh, no.
That's for sure. Yeah, you got to watch that documentary. It's called The Safe Side of the Fence.
Okay.
It's about St. Louis. It's, there's 4 legacy sites in St. Louis. They have really contaminated that little neck of the woods down there off the Missouri River. So it's another one of those horrendous stories that our government has done, and without regard to, I mean, this is the thing. This is why I'm fascinated with your journey. You've done it 32 years. And you're going to do it probably forever, because they refuse to be honest brokers in the program here.
Right. I know.
We are forced to deal with a criminal element. Like, it's almost like they're the mafia. Like, okay, John Kennedy and his brother Bobby got rid of the mafia, but they moved him into the government in the form of the NRC.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's why the government got rid of him, so that the mafia could take over the government. I mean, it sounds flip, but I don't know.
The NRC is not doing their job. They are not following their mandate, so they need to be abolished and replaced, like I said, with an agency that is intergovernmental and includes state and local.
That's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. That's a good. Is there an organization calling for that? Is that just yours or what?
Yeah, we are putting that together, like I said.
You're bantering around the idea. I think it's a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
But you know what also needs to be addressed? There's a scientific journal, I can send it to you, about the safety culture model that every nuclear facility uses is based on the IAEA safety culture model. And do you know it was never empirically tested until 2012?
Really?
Only tested once? And when it was tested, the 8 markers of safety failed miserably, except for one that passed 50%, and that one marker was that the employees felt like they could tell their bosses they felt there was something wrong in the plant. And that only passed 50% of the time. Right.
So when Pilgrim was being evaluated, the NRC identified a very poor safety culture. And then they said, it was like 2 years ago, and they said, well, it's a very poor safety culture. It will take 5 years to be repaired. I'm like, well, we can't wait 5 years.
Right. That's right. Is that why is that what helped get it closed down, is they were like so unsafe that it was insane to keep them?
I think so. It was because it was so unsafe, and the repairs that they would have to have made would have cost millions and millions. They decided they were going to pull the plug on it rather than do the repairs.
Wow. Well, thank you,
But
Diane.
and they weren't making profit, either.
Wow.
They were shut down 78 days in 1 year. Every day they lose $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It was a dinosaur, a dangerous dinosaur.
Well, it's like Columbia Generating Station, exactly the same thing. That's what we're saying. I mean, it is identical, and it needs to be shut down. These things all need to be shut down. We need to close. We don't need to use any of them until we figure out what to do with the waste. It's not a small amount. We've heard people say it was just a small amount of waste. No, it's not. It's a large amount of waste.
Right. Yeah, we don't need the...
Diane, we've got 2 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, is there anything you want to tell our listeners or suggest that they do?
Well, you know what? If they are on Facebook, they can like our page, Cape Downwinders. I'm always posting articles and information, and that's a good way to stay in touch because we are connected with other groups across the country. And I update on what's happening here in Massachusetts.
Okay. Well, Facebook seems to be the place that the people that are working in this effort connect is on Facebook. So I suggest, the reason I reluctantly go to Facebook is for that very reason. But I really appreciate the work that you've done, and I can't tell you how much I really appreciate this interview with us and picking your brain about why and how all this is happening. It stuns me. Like, I just can't get used to it.
No, after 32 years, I'm still stunned.
Wow, that's nice to hear.
It is. Like you said, it's a crime against humanity, and we got to keep raising our voices to make the change.
Well, that's a great way to end the show. You've been listening to Lonnie Clark with the Age of Vision radio show with Diane Turco from the Cape Downwinders, and we really appreciate you being with us, Diane. I hope you'll join us again soon.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And you guys put your courage feet on and remember, happiness is resistance. And we'll talk with you guys soon. Take care. Thank you for joining the Age of Vision radio show. Please like, subscribe, and share on Spreaker.com or on the YouTube channel nutzforart, NUTZFORART. Send all comments and ideas to Lonnie Clark at ageofvision@gmail.com. We urge all, especially scientists and politicians, to follow the words of our beloved American icon, Mark Twain. Always do right. This will gratify some and astonish the rest.